Day, day number 5? Sure. Day number 5 of the November 2005 7-day retreat in Springwater. It's a strange thing with this time. It seems to pass faster all the time. I don't know what it has to do with getting older. It goes so fast that you are late all the time now. I mean, I am, not you. Maybe you are too. Then we would be on the same track again if we're both late. And then it has passed so fast that it has stood still. It's still the same one whole day, or one whole night, or one whole 24 hours. Nothing seems to have moved. It's strange. What occurred to me that we could talk about? Now that has gone too. Are you in a hurry to hear something? We can all wait till something comes. Oh, such a good topic. Sort of. It lent itself to milking, but I forgot it. Because I had to sign a Medicare card, and some other things came up. Darn it, if I would just let it go, but I want to find that thing. If I could just let it go, then the 10,000 other things would probably occur. We can just sit for a while together. Are we listening? That takes no effort, does it? Are we listening? In other words, the same awareness for all of us? Is it, or do you think that you have your own separate awareness? And awareness is individual, personal, mine and yours. That's how we think about things like that. We have been brought up this way in the way we talk and we have been talked to. Or do you get that wonderful, lovely feeling that this is not mine, but there is awareness? And these sounds appear. Of course, there are some sounds which appear more here in this particular individual than over there in the corner or in the last row on the left side from here or from you. There are some individual sounds, but awareing is not individual. You may want to discuss that in the group, because you may have believed firmly, tenaciously, that this is yours. And if I do a lot of retreating, meditating, then I will get better and more awareness. But what actually happens with more retreating is this, that I find more awareness? Or is it that through some seemingly magical process, more and more clouds disappear, open up, recede into a background until there's nothing left of clouds at the moment? Maybe there'll be another cloud in a few minutes or so, who cares? Right now, without any clouds, all that's left is awareness. Are we together on this? Listening. And whatever is there, whatever appears, roars and rushes, and no bird song. Somebody grieved over that in the last group meeting, that the summer retreat was so much nicer because there were all these birds to listen to. There are so many of them, we feed them very amply. And although this year, feeding or not, I'm not feeding them at home, but my goodness, were there birds. There was every color of the rainbow, it seemed, fluttering around from tree to tree. Particularly what I haven't had in past years were 2 blue jays, so blue. My goodness, so blue. And they were not raucous. Sometimes here they chase other birds away, or else when they come, the other birds fly away. They already have an inkling. They cannot stay with these possessive guys. Although there are females around too. So the red ones, so beautiful, they are called something or other, cardinals. And the yellow ones, so yellow. Do you get them here too? Of course you do. You get all the birds here. Yellow, rushes, robins. And at home, while I was eating breakfast, I've got 2 glass doors from top to bottom. You can see through them. There are little juncos, Kyle used to call them. He knew them by name better than I do. Well, it's not hard to know them better than I do. And they're almost, you could say, boringly all gray, but it's not at all boring because they just invite you to put your hands around them. They look so soft. You know the juncos. I don't know why they have this funny name, because they don't look junky at all. But it is not junky, it is junco. A little bit of white underneath. And they were finding something. What were they picking at? Some fruit of a tree, some berry, and the berry was huge, almost as huge as the little junco head, and it just kept going at it. And it was a meal for 2 or 3. So much food in that berry. And I used to think, or we used to say, birds are sort of nervous. They flutter here and there, have no endurance. They have to move around. But if you watch them and you are not nervous, not in a rush, you have all the time in the world, which happens every once in a while. Then you notice this is not franticness or so. This was just a word projection. They're just doing their thing, and there's probably a good reason to change locations. From here to there, and then back here, and then still some other place. just wonderful to watch birds. And retreat is a good time for it. Even though somebody who is a bird watcher, she told me she's not going to bring her glasses anymore because it's too engaging. It's too ego engaging to look for birds and find them and write them down and communicate with friends whether they have found this bird yet. So she felt, let this go. So again, the question comes, can we do something without ego involvement? I don't know what's wrong with it. I mean, so you do keep notes of where you saw what bird. It's all right. There is space enough for everything to take place. There's nothing crowds awareness space. Nothing crowds listening space. There's always still some more space for something to occur. And when that is felt and seen, this inexhaustible space for things to happen, then franticness drops away in yourself, whatever that is, and you don't project it onto the birds anymore either. You just see them doing their thing. And you're amazed, where were you all these years when you didn't see what was going on and didn't hear and listen? It was also going on, but there was not, what was missing? And what is missing in us most of the time? What is missing when we look from here to there and walk and think from here to there, looking for peacefulness and never finding it? Or can we find it? Can it be found? Reveal itself? Space, quiet, peaceful space. That's why people like to come to retreat. And there's only one drawback, and we have to warn ourselves and each other of it. If you come here, because last retreat in October, there was this wonderful space and leisure, and you want to experience it again in a very naive way, you won't find it, and you'll be very disappointed because you're looking for it. Frantically wanting it back. Whereas the first time when you came in October, you weren't looking for it. It was just presenting itself in its beauty, in abundance, inexhaustibleness, inexhaustible looking space. It was there, and it sort of permeated this whole everything. Body-mind, which did not feel separate from the space. It is one space, one awareing, one listening. And we may think, well, how did we do it? How did I do it last time that it was so present, so beautiful? You didn't do anything. That's what happened. When we don't do anything, then what is here presents itself in such beauty and abundance without any strings attached. And then the busy mind takes notes, like a good secretary, keeps writing down what's happened. The minutes, it's called. It's interesting. Take the minutes. And before coming back, you sort of look over the minutes from last time. There's the peace and quiet and relaxation all beautifully described because you took notes and wrote journals. And then you can't find what you wrote down last time. So put the minutes away. Is that possible? Put it away and not expect anything. Be with the disappointment if it's there, and realize that it's created by expecting something which you didn't expect last time. Last time it had opportunity to present itself. And right now the expectation keeps it away. Do you see that? So, to sit without expectation, in spite of memory operating, in spite of this inborn, in-programmed drive to want pleasure, to want pleasurable experience, which is recorded in the brain as a memory. And it is wanted, because the body wants pleasure. It doesn't want pain, unless there are some weird psychological or neurotic tendencies to look for pain, to become a sufferer. This is pleasure to some of us at times, to be in pain, tell other people the pains we have or had. All of that brings some weird pleasure, or not. Yeah, it's very, very pleasure-oriented, this body-mind. If you say, no, it isn't, a human being also wants this or that or wisdom, I would put aside all conclusions that you have arrived at in the past and start from scratch. You don't know what the body really is programmed for or wants. And you could say, well, why do you speak about it then? Well, because I have to. I have to speak about something. Here, a little while ago, there was nothing. Maybe you preferred that to this. Right now, that could be. Did you? Did you prefer that? Just to sit quietly? Well, you have the whole day for that. So here's an hour or half hour. That sounds so nice, doesn't it? Walk, 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 walk. So if you feel, no, this is not the way I am constructed, I'm not out for pleasure, I'm a truth seeker or something, well, what is that? The truth is also a pleasurable experience, isn't it? Or at least don't substitute that for pleasure, but examine it, leave it sit there, this statement that somebody makes, or that you have made yourself, and question yourself whether, was this for pleasure? And then be quiet for a moment. Don't just immediately rationalize and explain and want to have been right, because we always want to have been right. But examine it impartially, not partial to yourself or to your favorite books. Examine it freshly. That is really a wonderful thing, the fact that we can do that. It is given to us to look freshly, to examine something freshly. And to examine, it's possible to examine something. If you ask me, well, how do I do that? I don't know how to do that. Well, I don't know how to explain it or how to describe it. You'll find yourself. If you really want to know, then you have to stop with all that you already have known in the past and watch. With the question, is that really so? And watch. And not be afraid to find, no, it isn't so. I'm not really seeking truth. I'm seeking for something to make me feel more important, because then I can write a book about the truth that I found. Find a good title for the book, then maybe somebody will buy it. Get a little income. I shouldn't be so cynical. It's really nice, and I recommend to people to write not necessarily for publication, because then you set up a goal, and with that you set up disappointments, because the thing never comes out the way one had imagined. But to write is an ordering of thoughts. Not just ordering and organizing them, but learn to express oneself clearly. Because we usually don't express ourselves clearly. We are sort of slipshod in the way we express things. And it's good when we do it with people and they say, "What do you mean by that? Say it clearer," or "I didn't understand it." And don't get hurt over that. It's not, the person probably doesn't say it to hurt you. He wants to understand what you're saying. And often we say, "Well, it's too hard to express. I don't have the right words for it. It's too difficult to express." But what is really taking place, watch it and let's go into this together. Isn't it that we haven't really looked carefully? We have looked in this very superficial way through words, which have always been available to describe something in a slipshod way, in a not very thorough way. And because we have these words that we can use to talk with each other, we don't look thoroughly. You may find that in a group where you're asked, "What do you mean by this?" or "What is that?" or "Say some more," that it's not that you don't have words, but that you haven't looked. And you can look right now. Maybe you need to be by yourself, alone, not on the public plate, so to say. It's okay to say, "Look, I got to be by myself. It's too embarrassing or so if I don't come up with something. But for myself, I will look." And then the clearer you look, or the better you look, the better you can express yourself. It is a really wonderful discovery. So the person who said, I really liked these summer retreats where we had these birds, because I do feel much more connection to natural occurrences, like the natural sounds, bird sound, wind sound, tree sound. Well, a lot of those are here in spite of the absence of birds. We've had certainly a lot of wind in this listening space. And it's marvelous to listen to, or scary. If you've been through a tornado recently or a hurricane, why that listening wind brings up all kinds of memories or associations. Maybe you haven't been in the hurricane, but you have read about it down there in the south. And all of these associations are lifted out of the depth of memory. They come to the foreground. It's amazing, isn't it? I hadn't thought about it, but somebody mentions it, and here are the pictures that one has seen and that have engraved themselves into memory. Pictures of all the human suffering that was brought about by the tsunami and the hurricane and the tornadoes and the floods and mudslides. Here the mind can produce it all on this internal screen display. So when we sit together here in this hall, can we understand, or at least question if we don't, that there is both a common listening space. It is common when there's no personal worry clouds, or anger clouds, jealousy clouds, or desire clouds fogging up the mind, which is the language, the words. When these clouds have dissipated, they're not there, then there's a common listening space. Do you see that? Because sometimes people say, there is never just one truth. There's only my truth and your truth and yours and theirs all over the world. Is there? Everybody has a little bit of the truth, somebody said in a meeting. And maybe that was said to warn, let's not claim that I've got it all. I've got the whole truth. And fortunately I do, whereas you have just falsehood or a little bit of the truth, but not the whole thing. Is that so? Does each one of us have a little bit of the truth? What do we mean by that? And of course that dialogue is long past. So we can't, well, we could ask it again, freshly. Is it so? Is it true that there is no truth per se, that is common, that is universal, belongs to everybody and therefore to nobody? It belongs to nobody because it can only reveal itself, be felt and seen, when there isn't this me, huge cloud. That's the darkest, biggest, obscure cloud there is, this me, where everything else recedes or is covered, isn't obvious. Me. By me, do you know what is meant by me? This reference to my life, my knowledge, my background, my abilities, my desires, my sorrows and pains, everything, my, and everything that is perceived or thought about is brought in the brain in relationship to this me. The whole lengthy story of me. Lengthy story tied together by what? I don't know what's tying it together. There must be some function in the brain that makes it sort of coherent, internally coherent. So it's experienced as one story, mine, as compared to yours. Is that observable, that as you think of something or perceive something, or we talk in a group about something, somebody mentions their experience, and something some function in the brain brings this in relationship to me. How do I stand to that? Have I experienced that? And it's a real urge to bring that in relationship to me and to voice it, that relationship. Yes, as I have experienced it, and I'm not saying this is bad, it's just what happens. As I have experienced it, it has been like that. To make it meaningful, what is being said, there's this relationship established to me and my life, what I remember and what I have experienced. I wonder whether we would understand each other, the stories that we tell each other, if we didn't have one to relate it to, our own. Or whether that relating it to our own story makes it meaningful, understandable. And the more we have experienced, the more people we have known, the more we have traveled, the more we can understand what other people are talking about. Maybe some hypothesis that can be tested. Here it is. And if one is interested, to see, how do I listen to something somebody tells me? This bringing into relationship, and if that has a very strong weight, then there may be distortion going on. It's more what I have experienced than listening and trying to figure out or aware what somebody else has experienced. It is possible to some extent, but if the very strong feeling that I have to bring it to my experience, then this is distorted listening. We may not even hear what the person says, but have distorted it toward what I have experienced. And we wonder why we don't understand each other. So how possible is it to listen purely what somebody says? We always come back to that. And you may come back to very quickly to saying, well, it's not possible. We've been through this. It's not possible. We can only listen through our own filters. Well, maybe, but I can question it. Whether it's possible to listen innocent as a child. Because a child hasn't experienced anything yet and still can listen and remember. Like the sound that is heard there. Does the mind grope around to relate it to something? It could sound like an ocean coming in, or like trees, wind in a forest. Not just trees, it's a lot of forests. Or the tide coming in. Walking in California up the fire hill behind the house. It's amazing how that you don't know what you're hearing, whether it's the trees or whether it's the ocean or whether it's the traffic. And it's neat to aware the mind sort of trying to fit it into past experience. Is it this? Is it that? Because it wants to know what this is. Maybe for its own security and safety. what just went through the mind was a question that has come up quite a number of times in the past. People asking me, why do you talk so much about our difficulties or negative emotions, like anger or fear or whatever these all are, and not about what's nice and good in us? And in sort of perusing what we've been talking about, I don't think it's been any of that, either of that, neither. Not that there was any intention to do it or not to do it, but it didn't come up. Of course, the negative things is what people bring into a meeting more frequently than telling about wonderful things they've experienced. And this is what we need help with, or think we need help with. Get some input from somebody who we think has some wisdom or more than I do. That's what the person thinking, more than I do. Why think about anything as negative or positive, but just what comes up, and begin to question it. Question it meaning looking at it with curiosity. Why this? And I don't mean analyzing it, but the more questions we ask, the more we're asking for attention, for wondering. What is this really? And then somebody brought up last night or sometime in a group, when you talk about questions and people bring up their questions, I don't have any. I don't know what it is that's going on in people, that they have questions. And maybe this person was feeling not up to the norm or so, when one doesn't have a question. So there is no norm. One may have lots of questions, but not realize it, not have yet looked at it as a question, a wondering. Or there's just a sitting in quietness. I don't want to say in satisfaction, but just this amazing equanimity, which means what? Evenness. Everything is in harmony, in balance. There's the sound and the gurgling in the stomach. There's some tension maybe in the body, but it can be looked at. There's a bird calling. And the movement of air, breathing, the neighbors breathing. It's all there as it is, and it is not a question. So what are you people doing, as the person was wondering, when you ask questions? And then, of course, the next step is feeling, what is that? Feeling inferior, that one doesn't have what the others seem to have. So to try not to evaluate oneself at all on the basis of what others are doing and what I think I'm doing, this is also futile. Because what happens when you say, I don't have a question, what do they do with questions? Then you set up a separation. The people that one hears asking questions are you too. That's you also. And this absence of questions in a lake, in a placid lake, of equanimity, it's them too. Do you get that sometimes? It's not them out there and then as compared to me here, which is who is so different. But what you perceive in others is you too. I don't mean as a nice philosophical positive phrase, but it is a fact. And now does the question arise, how does she say that? How come she experiences this and I don't? See, you do have a question. Yeah, that's a big question for a lot of people. What is this thing that you're always talking about? That we are not separate. That is, there's no dividing line existing between you and me, between the world and little old me. What are you talking about? I'm assuming your position, if that's what you question. Do you wonder about this? What is this division or no division? Because you have to also aware what makes for division. Because maybe if that isn't happening in a person, then there is no feeling of separation. So what makes for a feeling of division between you and me? The world, which is so horrible, so deluded, or so everything is wrong with the world, and it's getting from good to bad, from worse to worse. Do you have that question? Is there truly a dividing line between that world out there and me here? And if so, if you feel that you are separate of that, what is it? You cannot feel something without pointing at least vaguely to what makes for that feeling of division. Because the first response may be, I don't know, I just have that feeling, but we won't settle for that, will we? What makes for the feeling of me here and the world out there? Me thinking about the deluded world, emoting about it, feeling sad or angry, disappointed, afraid, what is the world coming to? All of this, what we've mentioned right now, is thinking, isn't it? Are we in agreement about that? You could say, no, it's a fact. There's anxiety and fear and anger in people or in the world or in me about each other. It's there. Is it? You have to become real quiet. Quiet meaning not have the answer, because answers make noise. Whereas wondering and not knowing quiet down the mind. Have you found that? The mind that does not know, doesn't have the answer, is curious about how it really is, not just how I've always put it in language and other people have. There's quietness, evolving, unfolding. What is this world out there? What are, quote unquote, the people from whom I feel so separate? What is all of that? Because I have said it's thinking. But what is thinking? What is that? And to really get to the root of something, of any question, if that question is asked in all seriousness, the mind has to quiet down. Can we agree on that? Quiet down in not knowing. Not quiet down in satisfaction with some answer. No, it's quieting down in not knowing. Which means, can you feel it? The ears and eyes and every pore of the body-mind open up in not knowing. Are we together on this? Openness in, I don't know. Are we together in this? I don't know. This quiet breathing, quiet listening, quiet attending. And where in this quietness of listening can there possibly be any division? A world and me. It takes the rising of thinking again, doesn't it? And the rising of thinking is the rising of separating out, of knowing, the activity of knowing cuts through the quietness, divides it up into this and that. Are we together in that? We will end here for today.